Typically my sermons are more story, and so looking at a passage and laying out a story that really helps define how we live, how we approach life, how we approach others, how God sees us. And this is a little bit different. So I'm sitting up here, and I tend to be pretty vulnerable in my preaching per se. But here I am sharing with you one of the most defining seasons of my life. And I wouldn't say that I am short on defining seasons of my life where I had to go try to find something. So, I mean, when you have 4 kids, there are some defining seasons in life. When you pick up and move across the country to be a part of seeing the gospel impact this area, that is a defining season of life. When you leave a career in the engineering world to enter a world of ministry, that is a defining season of life. But this last summer is maybe, I don't know if I want to go, see, I'm torn, like, is it the most defining season? Because then it's like, well, my marriage isn't, my kids aren't, so that sounds kind of bad, right? But let's just put it, it's one of the most defining seasons of my life. And I was trying to think, how do I even communicate that? What do I even share with you? And I think maybe one of the easiest ways to do that is I just came up with 4 questions that I asked myself. And some of these questions I may still be wrestling through to find answers. And so this morning, I think I can confidently tell you, you will get out of this as much as you want to get out of this. And I think that as the church, we have a tendency to come up and say, all right, I need to put a sermon together that mesmerizes. Well, this isn't one of those, okay? You will get out of this what you want to get out of it, I think. So I know that many of you sit there and you and I probably would have done the same beforehand. You think, wow, 2.5 months off of work. How do I manage that, right? What can I do to make that happen? And there's a couple things that I realized moving in was, and some of this I'm still realizing. So I was looking over my calendar for 2016 the other night. And as I was looking over my calendar, because I track everything, I could tell you where I was at any particular time in 2016. I just keep a really accurate calendar. And as I was looking at that, I was like, I don't think I had any margin whatsoever. No margin. So, one of the kids goes into the hospital, oh crap, there's no margin. One of the family, as far as like days of rest and like time together, there's like no margin. And as I was looking at 2016, I was literally working 4 jobs. And I am one of those guys that says, it's one thing to have the opportunity and the privilege. It is an absolute privilege to be able to share from the stage about what life looks like, about what following the Lord looks like, about what it looks like to live within our culture. But if you cannot represent that within your life, there is a problem. There's a drastic problem. So for me to be able to teach you what health looks like, I have to be healthy in my own life. And I can, I'm not going to tell you names. I can tell you, I get to spend a lot of times in different churches and with different leadership teams and pastors. That's part of the one job that I get to do. And I wish that I could tell you that is more the case than it's not, that pastors and leadership teams find themselves in a healthy place of life to lead the people God has entrusted to them. But I can tell you that's just not the case. And for me to have the opportunity to be able to enter a season like this last summer, a season that you guys allowed, a season that the leadership team here allowed, a season that you as part of the Awaken body allowed, says a lot about what it looks like, the way that we want to posture ourselves to this community. Does that make sense? So I've got 4 questions. For me, this is, like I said, it's just a little bit different because it's like I don't have like major notes that I'm going to be teaching you through. It's just 4 questions that I had to answer, still am having to answer. The first one, and I think these are good questions for us to even think through. How, you may or you may not ever get a season in life like I had. As I did research leading into this season, I found actually surprisingly these seasons happen more in the corporate world than they do in the church world. And so there's a lot of stuff out there for leaders and business people to take these sorts of opportunities for a couple of months, some longer. A couple months actually was the short, kind of the short end. But there's things that I've seen where people take they decrease their living in order to be able to take some time away from their job. I actually know somebody that did that a few years ago. They change kind of the way they approach life for a season in order to be able to take the opportunity to step away from a full-time work. There's very few cases where I saw that churches actually do this still. Although they do, it's just not as prominent as what I saw in the business world. But all that said, one question here is, how did this sabbatical make you better? How did this sabbatical make you better? This is going to sound a bit funny. So I wrote down here, I feel more comfortable embracing my humanity. Some of you guys that know me, you smile because, like, I want to be a superhero. Not like my son wants to be Batman, right? But I want to feel like I can conquer all. Okay? There's some of us have this built-in intrinsicness to achieve. And I've always had that. Always, even as a kid. How can I achieve more? And Pastor Jeff used to tease me. He said he would tell me that I was like a robot. And that my approach to life was very regimented and like, man, robots don't feel a whole lot. And so this season in life, I'm entering back from a sabbatical, and Jeff looked at me the other day and he says, dude, I just don't understand you. You're like really feely. I don't know what to do with that. And I was like, yeah, dude, I know. I'm like, man, I like feel all these emotions. So I was watching a video clip from this series. Is it called This Is Us? Is that what it's called? I was watching a video clip from that the other day when I was involved in some leadership discussions. And first of all, why would a leader pick that to show to a group of leaders other than to make us cry? But I'm sitting at this table and I'm like starting to get teary-eyed. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. What are these things? These things they call tear ducts. I didn't think I had any of those. But when you take a season in life, and I think that you can provide these seasons yourself in different ways, because some of the things you may not realize, over the summer I was working two of my other 4 jobs. But you create space, you create margin, where you learn to be still. So I had a stack of books that I said, I'm going to read those books through the summer. And I read a book in 2/3. And that's like nothing for me. I can breeze through a book in a week. And I found myself unable to read. I found myself unable to take in new information, if you will. Because we're not talking about like reading Stephen King novels, okay? We're talking about reading some substance. Sorry to all you Stephen King fans. It's all right. But I found myself unable to take in any sort of information. And I felt like the Lord was forcing me to a season of stillness. A season of rest. And not a season of rest like, hey, I took a day off today. But just a season of I'm going to break you of that need to accomplish. So some of you are, God is designed in such a way, you hit a day off and you just like, man, I've been waiting for this all week. Man, I just love staring at the sky and hearing the birds and looking for rainbows. Now, I'm not one of those guys. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a sky. Better not rain today. I got things to do. But the Lord just put me in a place where he said, you are going to be still. And even now, I find myself wrestling through emotions that I didn't know were there. If any of you have ever done any sort of research around Myers-Briggs, my Myers-Briggs is an ENTJ, which very much fits hard driving, hard achieving. Feelings, you're like, what the crap is that? What is that? I can't describe that. That needs to go away. That's very much an ENTJ. And I feel like, see, there I go using the word feel instead of think. But the Lord made me stop to feel. And stop to feel things at a very deep and personal level. Some of it processing my own pain. Some of it processing my own insecurities. And, I found myself having to wrestle through where does that need to achieve come from. Some of it is intrinsic. It's, part of it the way God has wired me. But some of it, too, it's like, all right, where does that come from? What is the deep-seated desire at the root of all that? And how do I posture myself differently in my life, in this family, within this city, that really encompasses things like weakness? I mean, how many of us can sit here and say that we are perfectly comfortable in sharing our weakness? And those are things that through this summer, I kind of wrestled through as like the insecurities around our weakness. What does that look like? Why is that there? For me, I mean, my my desire to be strong is my desire to be looked upon as somebody that is respectful, somebody that knows what they're doing. And I found the Lord just like start to strip all that away this summer and make me wrestle through things like brokenness. And I mean, you can look through the scriptures here, and I found a whole new level of brokenness this summer when I had to go buy glasses. So don't judge me. But Philippians 2, I want to read this for you, and I want you to think to yourself, how often do you personally embrace this? Because this is the sort of thing that I'm talking about. Philippians 2, verse 1. So if there is any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. And he says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit. How much does your life revolve around selfish ambition and conceit? I mean, isn't that what I just mentioned? My insecurities come from a place of selfish ambition and conceit. But do we stop long enough to process what it is the Lord is trying to show us and teach us? I don't think we do. And I'm not saying that you have to take a 2.5-month sabbatical to find that. For me, that's the way the Lord chose to reveal those things. To you, it'll be in other ways. And it says, but in humility, count others more significant than yourselves. And I think in American Christianity, we can say, hey, I held the door today. Hey, I took out my neighbor's trash. I'm a pretty cool person. Wow, hey, you know, I helped that guy this morning get lunch because I knew he couldn't get lunch, so I did that today. I mean, those are cool, but what is at the driving force of that? Is it so I can feel better about myself? So others would look more highly upon me? So I can show up on Sunday morning and be like, man, I had a great week. I looked more like Jesus this week. I think Paul defines some of it. He says, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. How much are you more interested in other people than you are yourself? Like, seriously, I had to wrestle with that stuff this summer. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped. And then he says he emptied himself. He emptied himself. I mean, that's pretty radical. I mean, to truly empty myself, I have to, say I'm okay coming to a place of weakness where I don't feel like I have control over anything. Man, brokenness. Jesus embraced his brokenness. I mean, here is God coming in the flesh, and he embraces his brokenness. We resist our brokenness. You know, we may have struggles with finding employment at different seasons, or you know, and we're like, how dare you, God? I deserve this, whatever this might be. But we walk with this sense of entitlement that I have something coming to me. And really, Jesus postures himself with weakness and brokenness and powerlessness, woundedness. How do we posture ourselves that way? I mean, it's really our own pride, our own desire to either be looked at with esteem, to be treated with respect, to be not seen as a failure. These are all the emotions that I had to wrestle through this summer. Can I tell you a little secret? I'm going to sound like a heretic. It didn't come from here. It came from the Lord making me be still and making me listen to his voice as he challenged me with these questions. And I think that we in our American Christianity, and I know I could sound a little bit bitter here, and I'm not, but I think that we can approach our faith and say, well, I read the Bible so many times this week, and I held the door for somebody this week, and I give an X amount of my money each week, and I'm in worship, well, probably not every week, but I'm there at least half time. And we do those things, and we say, I'm a pretty good dude. Man, I found this summer that, this question, how did this sabbatical make you better? I found it made me better by showing me my weakness, showing me my insecurities and why they lie there, showing me that when I walk into a room, why is it certain rooms I'm comfortable in and certain rooms I may walk into, might feel this sense of, wow, I don't know if I should be here. I don't know if I want to be in this space. And it's like, what does that come from? What are those insecurities? When you meet somebody, and you might stumble over words depending on who that person is, you're like, why does that happen? I mean, there are deep, deep things there that the Lord wants to show and wants to reveal. And it's not just through a sabbatical. And I just spent 20 minutes on one question. What skills or tools did you learn during that time? I learned how to slow down. I learned how to slow. So I went into the sabbatical, and I knew that I have a tendency to move very quickly. In fact, Connie is always saying, Mike, slow down. I need a little bit of time to process. Because it's like I processed and I'm on to the next thing. And so I did a few things this summer. I said, all right, I'm going to plant a garden to make me slow down. And I'm going to do some woodworking, just some different things around the house, and that'll make me slow down. And in the garden, so I planted the garden all in a weekend. I built these boxes. I planted the whole thing. It was all done in a weekend. So that was very comfortable for me because it was something I could control. It was something I could just look at the end of the day and say, look what I did. I went out next weekend, and there was nothing growing. And I'm like, what the heck? I watered this all week. I pruned it, peppers and tomatoes and all the good stuff. And like, man, I work. I probably can't say it. I worked my butt off. And it was like, where the heck is my fruit? I was like, all right, so I got to wait another week. So I went out 2 weeks. There was still nothing there. And I went to my neighbor who's like a great gardener. I'm like, Miss Nancy, tell me what is wrong with me. What's wrong with my freaking garden? There is nothing here. I found that gardens take months, not weeks. Man, I wish somebody would have told me that ahead of time. So one of the skills or tools that I learned through this summer was to slow down. Don't always be in a hurry to move to the next thing. And sometimes I think that we cut ourselves short. I think in a lot of seasons we want to hurry up and move past those seasons. And ideally so, because some of those seasons are painful. But we want to hurry up and move past them. And I think we cut short the work that God wants to do in us. So like one of the drastic mistakes I could have made this summer was like fill every ounce of my time. And I knew that that would be my temptation, so I put other people in my life and said, you need to pull up and check with me to make sure I don't do that. Now, this isn't a license for some of you. You're like, man, I could fill all my time with nothing. So this isn't a license to go home and say, man, Pastor Mike said I don't have to do anything this week. That was the best sermon I've ever heard. That's not what I'm telling you. Third question, what convictions did you come to? What convictions did you come to? Man, I don't know how to say this without sounding bitter. See, this is that part of that feely side I found this summer, and I'm like, what the crap? I'm feeling all these emotions. What is this? Jesus, make this go away. This can't be human. I believe that many of us today, because we are so wrapped up in how I am postured to the rest of the world, many of us don't know the voices that God gave us. I want you to think about that. So I left this summer convicted that many of us do not know and understand the voices that God gave us. For some of us, we use voices of cynicism. For others of us, we don't use a voice at all. For me, I probably just talk too much. But my conviction is I don't think many of us understand the voice that God's given us. Ephesians talks about different voices of apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher. I would argue for centuries the church hasn't understood what those things mean. I would argue that each of you have a voice. And I would say the church doesn't do a very good job of helping you find your voice. Now, before you say, yeah, I know, that darn church. You are the church. So as you say that, do this. How are you helping and challenge somebody else to find who it is that God's designed them to be? I don't have time to teach on all these different kinds of voices that I believe God gives to his church. But I will say that I believe that many of us never find our voice because we're too scared to go to the places that we need to find that voice. Because the Lord often shapes us through seasons of brokenness, seasons of struggle, seasons of suffering, seasons of weakness. I mean, that's what I just read to you. Jesus came and postured himself that way to the world. I mean, did he just do that because, man, I think this might be kind of fun. I'm not used to doing this as God, so maybe I'll try something new on for size. I think he was showing us something about what it means for us to posture ourselves to the world. But many of us don't find that voice because we're too scared to go to those kinds of places. And instead of going to those kinds of places, we would rather mark off our calendar and say, well, I attended so many worship gatherings, I read my Bible, maybe some of you, and these are all good things, maybe I got involved in a missional community. And And those are all good things, and those are all settings to allow us to enter a place for the Lord to speak to us. And those are healthy rhythms to be involved in for the Lord to speak to us. Don't worry about them. Focus on me. So I only got like 3 more minutes, so I want my 3 minutes. Ignore these guys. They get more time than I do. I think that, many of us don't find our voices because that requires us to go to scary places to find our voices. And we wonder why so much of our culture grows angry and bitter. And I would tell you that is one of the things that broke my heart this summer. And it leads to my last question. What are you excited to lead our community into? I'm excited to lead you to places of suffering. I'm excited to lead you to places of struggle. I'm excited to lead you to places of weakness, powerlessness. The same places that I tackled through this summer, but I also would say that I've been in for a lot over the years. And in those seasons, I always found myself needing to hurry up and get out and don't let anybody know you're there. And this summer, it was like, no, those are seasons to be glorified. Those are seasons to say, to God be the glory. Because those are the places that God shapes us. That's what it means to walk as a body together. It's what it means to be in community together. And man, that's a whole different subject. Our culture resists community like nothing else. And it's more dangerous here than other places in the country I've been. We don't embrace those things, we're never going to find the voices that God gave us to be a part of the expansion of his kingdom. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the growing church. I'm talking about Jesus shaping our world. And if we are true followers of Jesus, that is what we are called to, is the shaping of his world. So, 42, 41, 40 seconds. Those are some of the things that I learned over the summer. Things that were painful, things that I continue to learn, things that I would say makes it one of the most defining seasons of my life, where I am probably not the same Mike that you knew when I left. That I say, amen, praise the Lord. Because God allowed me to see things within me that he wanted to change. God allowed me to see things in me to allow me to give a voice to our community to help see those changes within us. For that, I'm excited. And for that, I thank you for that season. Lord Jesus, I ask that you would let us wrestle through those questions ourselves, those thoughts, those things that you had me wrestle through and embrace this summer. Let us wrestle through those personally. Lord Jesus, let us not wait to think upon those things until next Sunday. Let us wrestle upon those things even this afternoon. Lord, let us go for walks. Let us grab coffee. Let us discuss this with somebody else. Lord, let these things, the things that you spoke to us this morning about, Lord. And I think all of us could say, the Lord really said this to me. Lord, let us wrestle through that. And let us be changed evermore because of your grace and your mercy.